Welcome to my 2021 college football preseason preview of the Big 12 Conference. This is part of my series where I go through and I'm looking at each of the conferences this year. Figured I better go make this video quickly while the Big 12 still exists. Just kidding. Of course, big shakeup coming in the Big 12. Oklahoma and Texas moving to the SEC, possibly as early as next season, but I believe it was reported that they were looking at it was a 2024 or 2025, but the SEC is looking to get them in there quickly. A lot of big shakeup coming. Big 12 might not be around for too much longer, though of course they are going to play as a complete conference for at least one more year this season. What kind of sparked these videos is every single year, at least for the last 4 years, I've gone through the Athlon Sports magazine. Not my favorite magazine for analysis, but I do like their format. That's my favorite format. Anyhow, I've gone through the Athlon Sports magazine and I have written down what I think the overall record of each team is going to be. And at the end of the season, I've come back through and checked myself. And every year I've been better than the Athlon Sports projectors. So I figured it's about time to put it on YouTube, at least have some hard proof there, so I can go around showing people how smart I am. I'm just kidding. I greatly expect to be very wrong on several of these teams, at least this year. I don't expect to be as accurate I have been in the past. This season is because this season is the hardest of any season to predict. With so many conferences playing so many different kind of formats. I mean, you have teams that have only played 4 games over in the MAC, in the Pac-12. You have teams that played full 12-game schedules over on the East Coast. It is ridiculous how crazy it was. First, it was ridiculous that the NCAA didn't step in and make a concrete system right across the board. Part of the reason that they've completely forfeited their right or their even ability to regulate football in general, and why we see so many college football shakeups going on with Oklahoma and Texas moving to the SEC, and the SEC potentially threatening right now to break off and become their kind of own division of college football, which happened when the NCAA forfeited their authority to regulate college football. It's been happening for a long time. Anyhow, that's a sidetrack. The main thing is, very difficult season to preview. Very different the way that COVID affected each team based on what state they were in, based on how many practices they were able to get in before the season got canceled and then reinstated, and then how they were able to practice in period. You saw some teams come out and have excellent years when they've had average to below average seasons in the past, and then you saw teams that are usually top of their conference, like Penn State, come out and have a terrible season, and you have to wonder how much of that was COVID, how much of that is that team itself. So that's why it just makes it so difficult to analyze. And I'm not the only analyst who's saying this. Across the board, analysts are saying this is one of the hardest seasons to analyze overall. But I'm going to give it my best shot here. We're going to jump right in and try and keep this video under 25 minutes if I can. So we're going to go straight in here with Baylor. First off, I gotta say, I am very excited about the Big 12. A lot of great quarterback play across the board. 2 great Spencers in the conference, both Oklahoma's quarterbacks, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State quarterbacks being named Spencer. So I think it's going to be an outstanding job beyond the Spencers. I think it's going to be a great job across the board. You may notice the Oklahoma State flag upside down. Of course, Boise State plays them this season. That's the reason hoping that we can flip them, and we'll see. That's why I also got the special pay in there. But we'll see how we do there. I'll give a little projection. I think Oklahoma State fans think you'll be pretty comfortably surprised by or excited by what I'm previewing for Oklahoma State this year. We just have to wait till I get to that. So jumping in right here with Baylor. So I'm going to go through every single team. I'm going to preview the team, how they played last season, what I'm projecting this year, what I think the team's going to look like overall, a projected record. I'm also going to give you what Athlon Sports is projecting, and then I'm also going to tell at the very end of the video, going to wrap up, say how these teams are going to line up, project who's going to be playing in the conference championship and winning that conference championship game. Make sure you also like and subscribe. I have a lot of video content that's not just Boise State, it's college football in general, and I'm going to be having a video coming out where I'm previewing the race for the playoffs and seeing which teams I think are going to line up or have the best chance of getting into that, and then giving my projection on which 4 teams I think are going to get into that playoff this year. So jumping right into it, Baylor Bears. Athlon Sports projecting 6-6, 3-6. Of course, last season having one of their worst in a long time with 2-7 record overall. Of course, they were coming in there with a brand new head coach, Dave Aranda, who didn't get a chance to implement his system before COVID really hit. So I don't think that season is reflective of Baylor overall. Of course, going 11-3 the season before that. They are having to replace both their quarterback and their running back, so it is going to be a little bit of a challenge there. The Athlon Sports, like I said, projecting 6-6, 3-6 6 overall. I think it's going to be slightly worse than that. I do think it's going to be 5-7, 3-6 is what I'm projecting here. A couple of wins again in the non-conference here. I think they're going to get a nice win against Texas State and Texas Southern to start off at 2-0. I think they'll be able to come in Big 12 play at 3-0 versus Kansas. But then after that, I think it's going to be a downhill slide until the end of the season when I think they might be able to pull off wins against Kansas State and Texas Tech. It's not so much that I think the Baylor Bears aren't talented. It's that they play an incredibly difficult schedule. I mean, they have Iowa State, Oklahoma State, BYU non-conference, Texas TCU, Oklahoma coming down the stretch. Big 12 is very competitive this year. I think you're going to see a lot of teams knocking each other off. So it'll be interesting to see what Baylor can do, but I think it is going to be a little bit of a disappointing season as they kind of try to work their way back up to that 2019 level of success. We'll have to see if Dave Aranda can do that in the end. All right, Iowa State Cyclones. So 7-6 in 2019. Had an incredible year last year when they went 9-3, 8-1, ending up losing to Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game. They were this close. I mean, they only lost by 6 points. They were this close to being their team representing the Big 12. Of course, going and playing and beating Oregon in that Fiesta Bowl. Outstanding job by the Cyclones. They returned talent across the board. 19 starters back. Pretty much everyone back on offense except for their left guard. Well, actually, they do return the left guard starter there. So pretty much on the offensive side, they're just missing one wide receiver. And the defensive side, they lose a defensive end and a cornerback and a free safety. But besides that, all their starters back there for offense and defense, other than the ones I just named. Brock Purdy, one of the best quarterbacks here in the Power. Well, not one of the best in the Power 5, I would necessarily say, but definitely top in the Big 12. Excellent quarterback who put up some great numbers last year with over 2,700 yards passing. An outstanding job. Also, quarterback who can get out there and scramble if he needs to. I think so. Athlon Sports is projecting a very good year for Iowa State. 10-3, 7-2. I think it's going to be one of the best Iowa State seasons on record. They've been playing well over the past few years. They've been working their way up. Even when they were having down years, they were still teams that were out there and were competitive. I memorably remember in 2011 when I lived in Oklahoma that Oklahoma State ended up losing to Iowa State in a big game there. So this is a team that's always been competitive, even when they were down, and now they're finally reaching their prime, coming under Matt Campbell, who after 5 years is finally reaching that level of success that's been expected here, or not necessarily expected, but hoped for at Iowa State. I think they're going to go 11-1, 8-1 Big 12. I think they breezed through their non-conference schedule with the easy wins against Northern Iowa, winning that rivalry game at Iowa, and then UNLV should be pretty easy across the board. I do think they'll drop a game to Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma is the best team in the Big 12 this year, but I think that overall it's going to be a very nice job by Iowa State coming down the stretch here and getting a chance to represent again in the Big 12 championship game. And that Oklahoma game is not a guarantee. That's going to be a close fought matchup, just like it was last year. Of course, we played twice. The first time they won, the second time they lost. I think that they'll have a chance to win it again. Very excited for Iowa State Cyclones to see what they can do. All right, Kansas Jayhawks. No surprise here. They end up losing Les Miles, who I really thought was their only chance to come in and actually be a competitive team in the Big 12. I thought Les Miles was an incredible mind at LSU. I don't think he deserved to be let go at LSU based on his football record, at least. I know there was some other controversies that he got caught up in, but just purely embracing the football level that he was, I think he was really Kansas's only hope, best hope that they've had in the last 10 years or so to really get in there and start to build up the recruiting class. They had their best 2 recruiting classes they've ever had under Les Miles there. So unfortunately, he's out the door. The Mad Hatter is gone, and in his place, they have named a starting head coach. I might butcher his name. He's from Buffalo. It's Lance Leopold. I think I was okay on that one. From Buffalo, so did some good things in the MAC with Buffalo there over the last few years. Not a top group of 5 team. It's really hard to attract a coach to come here to Kansas. Of course, going 0-9 last year and 3-9 the year before that. They're projected 1-11, 0-9 by Athlon Sports. I think that's probably fair. I think they're going to go 1-11, 0-9 as well. They may be able to pull off a win against South Dakota. If it was South Dakota State, I'd say they were going to lose. But South Dakota FCS team, they should be able to win that. But I think they're going to drop their game to Coastal Carolina, and they'll just be a slide after that with losses across the board. They do, they're even having to replace their quarterback and running back. Only 6 starters back on offense. Very talented recruiting class the last 2 years. We'll have to see if that translates into anything. If Lance Leopold is a coach who can perform and win games at Kansas, no one else has been able to do it in the past. We'll see if he can be a history breaker there and do some things going forward. All right, Kansas State Wildcats, the quote-unquote good team in Kansas, but we haven't been that over the last few years. 4-6 last year and 8-5 year before that. So some difficult years, some difficult seasons there, of course, after losing one of the greatest coaches, or losing one of the greatest coaches in college football history there, or at least just one of the just a legend on the coaching field. So second year for Chris Kleiman. I think it's Kleiman. Chris Kleiman there. Projected by Athlon Sports to go 7-5, 4-5 Big 12. I think it's gonna be a little bit worse than that. I think they'll go 6-6. 3-6 Big 12, so 6-6 overall. I think they'll open up with a 3-0 record to start off here with wins against Stanford. I think Stanford is the better team, but I think Kansas State can come in there versus Stanford and get the win. Neutral site game in Texas, that definitely helps Kansas to a certain extent. I think that Kansas can come in there and get that win. Stanford, I think, going to be a little bit unprepared. Then winning against Southern Illinois, a win against a very good Nevada team. This is a Nevada team that I think is playing some of their best football and having some of the most talented players on the team since those 2010 Colin Kaepernick days when they were able to go in and beat Boise State, or Boise State came into there and they were able to beat Boise State. This is a very talented Nevada game. I think that this is a game that Kansas State can definitely lose. They cannot be looking past Nevada. If they are unprepared in any way, Nevada will win this game, so they need to be very careful there. After that, though, it's a tough stretch with games against Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, and Iowa State. I think they can get a win against a down Texas Tech team. Likely going to drop a game to TCU, and then wins against Kansas, West Virginia, potential here. Definitely against Kansas at least, with losses at Baylor and Texas to close out the season. I think this is going to be a decent Kansas State team. I mean, they do return their starting quarterback and their starting running back, but it's a team that's trying to reestablish themselves after having a disappointing year last year with a head coach who's only gone 12-11 so far at the school, and of course 8-5 in his first year there. So I think this is a Kansas State team that is on the rise. I think it's a Kansas State team that is going to be able to establish themselves again as a at least above average, middle of the pack player in the Big 12 if it continues to exist. But it is a team that right now I think is dealing with a little bit of turnover there. Only 5 starters back on defense. That's going to be hard to handle, and I just think it's a team that's not going to achieve the expectations, at least that Wildcat fans have coming to this season. All right, Oklahoma Sooners, a great record last year, 9-2. Of course, winning the Big 12, going and beating Florida in the Cotton Bowl Classic. So great job there. I mean, they went on just a amazing job to finish the season with 8 wins right up there to finish the season. Outstanding job for them. I could have just done that by subtracting the first win. Anyhow, I think they go undefeated this year. The Athlon Sports is not as high on the Sooners as I am. I think they think they're going to have a good year. They think they're going to go 12-1, 8-1 Big 12. I think they go 12-0, 9-0. Spencer Rattler, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Easy non-conference schedule with wins against Tulane, Western Carolina, and Nebraska. Iowa State will challenge them. That's going to be close. Oklahoma State will be tough. Texas will be tough. This is not an easy schedule by any stretch of the imagination, but this is a really good Sooners team who returns a lot of players on start. 7 back on defense, even though they only have 6 back on offense. The key players are there in Spencer Rattler and Thayer Weasel there, receiving-wise, who had over 500 yards receiving last year, and Marvin. Sorry, different Marvin. Sorry, he's gone. But anyhow, the main point is they have some great players back across the board. I think it's going to be an exciting job for them. I think Spencer Rattler is going to be an outstanding quarterback for the Sooners. I think they go undefeated and represent the Big 12 in that playoff hunt. All right. The other team from Oklahoma State Cowboys. When we lived in Oklahoma, we were every state that we live in, we pick a team to be fans of in that state. We pick one of the rivalry teams. Of course, being a Boise State fan, couldn't be a fan of Oklahoma. And they didn't want us anyway. I think we got a lot of bad stares going around in our Boise State gear. And besides, my cousin back then in 2011 was second string punter on their team. So that's how I ended up getting the OSU banner from then. So I've been I wouldn't say a fan of Oklahoma State Cowboys, but I've definitely been a follower. Watched a lot of their games. Oklahoma, a great football state to live in. Great rivalry there between the Sooners and the Cowboys. The 8-3 record last season, 8-5 the year before that. That 8-3 was close to being a lot better than that. I mean, they had an overtime loss to Texas, where they only lost by a touchdown. They had a decently bad loss to Oklahoma. but they only had a 7-point loss to TCU. So this was a team that was just a few possessions away from not being 8-3, but being 10-1. I mean, this was a really good Oklahoma State team, a team that's definitely turned themselves around. Spencer Sanders is a great quarterback for them, with over 2,000 yards passing last season, and I think he can continue to develop and build upon himself there. Of course, he's also got the legs with over 200 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Projected 8-4, 5-4 by Athlon Sports. I think they're going to be better than that. I think they can go 9-3, 6-3. When I look at this record, I think they're going to get wins against Missouri State and Tulsa to start the season. That Boise State game is tough, and as a Bronco fan, I want to say it's a win. I'm going to be rooting for a win. I'm going to be looking to flip them if we can. But I just don't think with the Boise State team right now, with the coaching turnover we got Andy Avalos, we do have some great players across the board. It will be very close. It is at Boise. It's so hard to win on the blue. Not a lot of teams can say that they've done it. I would love to get some revenge, but the analyst in me is saying that I think that it's a couple seasons, or at least a season away from Boise State being able to go out there and dominate Power 5 teams like they have in the past. I think that with Andy Avalos' first year coming in, a lot of turnover, new offensive coordinator, new head defensive coordinator, new co-defensive coordinator, and just a lot of expectations coming into the season. I think it's going to be, Boise State's going to pull up just short. Of course, I'm going to be rooting for a win on the blue there, but I think Oklahoma State opens up with a straight 5-0 to start here with wins against Missouri State, Tulsa, Boise State, Kansas State, and Baylor. I do think they're going to drop games against Texas and Iowa State here. I just think those teams are probably the better teams here in the conference, but I think that they can win some games against Kansas, West Virginia, TCU, and Texas Tech before dropping the rivalry game to Oklahoma. This is going to be a very good Cowboy team. I think it could be a few points away again from being an elite team in the Big 12. I think they are just a season or a couple seasons away from kind of earning or gaining that top spot in the Big 12. Of course, Oklahoma and Texas leaving, it'll become a little bit easier to get that. I think that there is a potential here that Cowboys could have a much better season than what I'm projecting. But I do think they're going to have a couple of close losses. We'll see what happens with that Boise State game. All right. So Tcu Horned Frogs, and then we got just four more teams left here to preview coming down the stretch. So Tcu Horned Frogs, of course, that historic rivalry between Boise State and TCU. Gotta hate the Horned Frogs as a Boise State fan. Didn't have a great season last year, 6-4 and 5-7 the year before that. Athlon Sports is pretty high on the Horned Frogs. They think they're going to go 9-3, 6-3. They do have a great quarterback coming back in. They have a quarterback with a lot of potential coming back in Max Dugan. He hasn't really shown he's a great quarterback yet, but a quarterback with some potential coming back. That 9-3 and 6-3 record, though, being projected overall, is a little bit of a head scratcher for me. I don't think they're going to get that. I think it's going to be 7-5, 5-4 overall. They played Duquesne. I think that they're going to take a loss to California. I think that California is going to have, I think TCU is going to be vulnerable. I think California is going to be a little bit more motivated for this game. So I think California is going to come and get that win. I think they can win against SMU, but it's going to be close. I think they're going to drop games to Texas, Oklahoma State, and Iowa State, and I think they might even hit a trap game here. Oh wait, that is all the losses there. So I think they can win against Texas Tech, West Virginia, Kansas State, Baylor, and Kansas to get that 5-4 Big 12 record overall. I do think they're going to take a surprising loss to California. That's just my projection coming in here. I think it's going to be a little bit of another building year here for TCU. Of course, Gary Patterson, over 20 years here at TCU and counting. Has been an incredible coach for them over the years, has coached some great teams, but I just don't think that this is the talent. I mean, they only returned 6 players on offense, 7 back on defense, so it will be interesting to see. But last year, lots of disappointing losses across the board. Iowa State was a close one. Kansas State was a close one. They really shouldn't have lost to Kansas State. Lost to Oklahoma decently badly. Lost to West Virginia decently badly. So this is just not a team that I think is back to being the level of excellence as expected from TCU. So I think it is going to be 7-5, 5-4, but we'll see. Like I said, this is one of those points where Athlon and I disagree greatly. We'll see if that 9-3 holds true. TCU Horned Frogs can be wishing and hoping that I'm wrong. All right, Texas Longhorns coming down here. We got 9-3 projected by Athlon Sports, 6-3 Big 12. I think it's going to be better than that. I think Texas is a really good team. They played 7-3 last year, 8-5 the year before that. They were a few points off from being much better than a 7-3 record. Only 2-point loss to TCU. Less than a 10-point loss to Oklahoma in overtime there, so only an 8-point loss to Oklahoma. And Iowa State only a 3-point loss. I mean, Texas was just a few plays away from being the top team in the Big 12. I think that they had the talent last year. I think they could have done it last year, just didn't end up working out. COVID, I think, might have had a role in that, in the way that practice schedules and everything was worked out. Who knows? But Texas is a really good team. They do lose their starting quarterback, so they're going to have to replace their starting quarterback here. But they do return their primary running back, who had over 700 yards rushing. Steve Sarkisian is coming back. Coming to coach for Texas. It's his first season for the school. Steve Sarkisian, an incredible offensive mind who has been able to have some great success in the past. I think that he'll do some great things here. Of course, being able to go through the Alabama rehab program there after having a disappointing time at USC. I think that Steve Sarkisian comes in here and does a great job. I'm predicting 10-2, 7-2 overall for Texas, as they again become one of the top teams in the Big 12 as they get ready to make that transition to the SEC. Man, that Steve Sarkisian name is a tongue twister. All right, Texas Tech Red Raiders. I think 4-6 last year and 4-8 the year before that. Really kind of established themselves as one of the bottom level teams in the Big 12, and I think that continues this year. 5-7, 2-7 predicted overall by Athlon Sports. I think it's going to be way worse than that. I think it's going to be 3-9, 1-8. Don't return their starting quarterback. Matt Wells has not proven to be the head coach that Texas Tech hoped that he would be. I think they drop a game to Houston right off the bat. Houston, I think, is going to be pretty good. American Athletic Conference team. I think they can manage wins against Stephen Austin, FIU, but then I see losses on this schedule against Texas, West Virginia, TCU, Oklahoma, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and even Baylor. I think that Texas Tech ends up being the worst team outside of Kansas in the Big 12 this year. I do believe they'll go and get a win there. But I think that this is still a much of a building program. We'll see if Matt Wells can turn this program around to save his job here in the next few years. But I think that is going to be a couple years away for Texas Tech reestablish themselves as one of the mid-level teams in the Big 12 at the very least. All right, West Virginia Mountaineers, last team to look at here. Projected 7-5, 4-5 overall by Athlon. I think that's pretty close. I'm going 6-6, 3-6. Of course, going 6-4 last year and 5-7 the year before that. They do return their starting running back and their starting quarterback, which is nice for them, but only 6 players back on defense. So, and it was not a great defensive performance. They had some pretty good defensive games last year, but they did give up 42 points to Iowa State. They gave up 34 points to Texas Tech, who's not a great football team, and 27 points to Oklahoma State, which is a pretty good defensive effort overall. But the offense has really been the struggle here, with only one game of over 40 points against Eastern Kentucky and a 38 matchup against Kansas, but only 13 points against Texas, 6 points against Iowa State. Did manage to beat Army, but only barely in the Liberty Bowl. So this is a West Virginia team that I think is still struggling to compete and get to the level that they at least expect from themselves. I think they'll open up with a win against Power 5 team Maryland in the Big Ten there. I think they can get that win against Maryland, a vulnerable team. Then go into LIU, which is a FCS school. And then I think that they'll pull off a win against Virginia Tech. I think Virginia Tech is vulnerable. I think Virginia Tech is still kind of rebuilding right now. You can watch my preview of the ACC if you like. But I think that they'll get that win, start off 3-0, get a lot of excitement in the program, drop a game against Oklahoma before winning games against Texas Tech and Baylor to be 5-1. But then after that, I think it's going to be a downhill sled. I think they're going to lose against TCU, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, and Texas before managing to pull off a win against Kansas to stay bowl eligible for the Mountaineers this season. It's a little bit of a disappointing season there after such a great start, but we'll see what happens overall there, and if they're able to come back and have a little bit of a better season than I'm projecting. But I think it's going to be a little bit of a rebuilding year there for West Virginia. Okay, so where does it leave us? Where does that leave the team's position overall? Well, Athlon Sports is projecting Oklahoma number 1, Iowa State number 2, Texas number 3, TCU number 4, Oklahoma State number 5, West Virginia number 6, Kansas number 7, Baylor number 8, Texas Tech number 9, and Kansas at number 10. I'm going to be shaking things up a little bit, but not too much. I think it is going to be order of finish. Oklahoma number 1, Iowa State number 2, but just barely over Texas. Texas number 3, Oklahoma State number 4. I think they're going to be pulling up. So those 4 teams, though, it really could, at least between Oklahoma, Iowa State, and Texas, it really could come down to any 3 of those competing to be that top team. It'll just come down to the matchups head-to-head and see how it works out. Oklahoma State, I think, is also going to be the mix in there. And then finishing up kind of the bottom of the pack here, TCU number 5, 3-way tie for 6 between West Virginia, Kansas State, and Baylor. And then finishing it off here at the bottom, Texas Tech and Kansas is my projection. So the Athlon Sports is projecting Oklahoma over Iowa State in the Big 12 championship. I think that's fair. I think I'm actually going to agree with Athlon Sports on this time. I think it is going to be Oklahoma over Iowa State. Oklahoma, just an excellent team who's going to go out there, represent their team in the playoffs there, do a great job overall. Very excited. I am very excited though for the Big 12 season overall. Some great quarterback play, should be some good running back play, but especially the quarterback play is going to be very exciting to watch in the Big 12. Make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you look out for my video where I'm going to be previewing the other teams I think are going to be competing for that playoff hunt, the other top 4 teams potentially in the country. And I'm also going to give my projections on which teams I think are going to end up winning that overall season, winning the national championship there. All right, thank you for watching this video, and as always, go Big Blue.